In 1987, Brian Kessner sat at his desk at the Century City offices of the production company Taft-Barish, flipping through the script of the Flintstones movie, some of which takes place in Holly Rock, a kind of prehistoric Hollywood. Kessner stopped, read it again. This should be a real thing, he thought, like Hard Rock Cafe, but instead of music, it will focus on Hollywood. We'll bring Hollywood to different parts of the world. Kessner, a handsome 20-something who had dabbled in modeling, grew up on a farm in Virginia. For him, stars had always been people you saw on a screen, not at the next table. He launched into a near sprint to get to the office of his boss, producer Keith Barish. He looked at me like I was from outer space, Kessner said. Barish's business was film, not restaurants. He produced Sophie's Choice, The Monster Squad, and The Running Man, among others. But he liked the idea. "This works," he said. For the next year and a half, Barish met with restaurant veterans who could help execute this vision. Through New York publicist Bobby Zarum, Barish met Robert Earl, a colorful Englishman known for his loud silk shirts. Earl had become a king of entertainment with a chain of medieval-themed restaurants and was then the CEO of Hard Rock International. Celebrities have been putting their names on restaurants for at least a century, starting with Jack Dempsey's in the 30s. In 1990, as Earl and Barish were putting together their plans, Robert De Niro opened the chic Tribeca Grill in Manhattan, though he was mostly discreet about his ownership. Planet Hollywood would be different. The stars weren't incidental. In Barish's view, it would be a Hollywood museum that also happened to serve great food. But Earl wanted it to be more than that. All they needed were the stars. With Hard Rock, we were always sort of waiting around dressing rooms after a show to meet the musicians, Earl said. And I said to this group that I wouldn't do it unless we had celebrity partners for marketing. Barish hesitated. It was supposed to be Hollywood as a concept, an abstraction. It was supposed to feel like all the glamour and mystique of the film industry in restaurant form. It wasn't supposed to be about specific people. But Earl was the expert, the restaurant man, so Barish trusted him and went with it. Because they didn't have money, they offered shares in the company. Because there were no restaurants yet, the shares had little value. They needed an action star, someone with appeal in the U.S. and overseas, so they started with a moonshot, Arnold Schwarzenegger, whom Barish had worked with on The Running Man. It didn't get much bigger than Schwarzenegger in the late 80s, early 90s. He was hot off the Terminator and Total Recall. On Valentine's Day, after the actor wrapped a scene for Terminator 2 Judgment Day, Barish told him about the plan for a Hollywood restaurant. He accepted immediately. Barish left the set with his first star locked in. Next up, Bruce Willis. Die Hard 2 had just earned more than $100 million worldwide. Willis said yes and offered to play the openings with his blues band, the Accelerators. Sylvester Stallone was no hard sell. I begged, Stallone told Larry King in 1993. They saw me outside on my knees saying, "Please." They had their stars, but they needed a better name. Barish remembers. Earl said, "I have a name, but I'm not going to tell you." He said, "You have a name?" I said, "Yeah, I have a name. I'm not going to tell you." As if in a scene from a movie, the two men said the name at the same time. Planet Hollywood. They spent months and $8 million, plus the cost of the screening room construction, on the Manhattan restaurant, which was the first location. The banquets were the same color as those at the Beverly Hills Hotel. Palm trees peppered around the dining room recalled Southern California. Evan Todd, an assistant working with Barish who had no curation experience, was brought in to collect props and costumes to decorate the restaurants. Today, movie memorabilia is close to art, auctioned at prestigious houses like Christie's. But for decades, movie props were thrown out after filming, grabbed by whoever wanted to take them home, or repurposed by the art department for another shoot, leaving them unrecognizable. Todd went to the studios to ask for donations. Some would only lend items, demanding the right to get them back whenever they wanted. And he bought items that went up for auction, bidding against private collectors. Barish hired Anton Furst, the Oscar-winning set designer for Tim Burton's Batman, to design the restaurant. Furst thought they were joking, but a tribute to the movies intrigued him, and he signed on with the vision of making it just themey enough. His mandate, Furst told Esquire in 1991, was to create a fun place for the jeans brigade, not upmarket or smart. There was also a menu to create. Arnold wanted his mother's strudel recipe, Earl says. Stallone was always protein-driven, and Bruce, at the time, had more interest, because of his background, in the bar side. In interviews at the time, it was promised that Schwarzenegger would be in the kitchen cooking Wiener Schnitzel. But when the three chiseled men did press for the restaurant, it seemed clear how much the menu was an afterthought. "The day they can reduce a meal to a pill, I'll be happy," Stallone said with a smirk on a 1992 British talk show. "I guess it's from doing a great deal of training or whatever. Maybe it's just genetic. I'm just not prone to chew a lot. It doesn't go with my personality." When the host followed up with the obvious question of why the superstars were doing this, Stallone said, "Greed. Kidding. Well, sort of greed. It would be fun. And you know, it's nice not to just be making films all the time, to venture out and deal with real people." The logo, an electric blue planet framed with stars and the name of the restaurant emblazoned in cherry red on top, was everywhere in 1991. Madonna was photographed wearing a t-shirt on a jog. Selena donned a sweatshirt. President George and Barbara Bush got robes. Public relations masterminded a media frenzy before the doors had even opened. The chain's first location opening was in Manhattan on October 22, 1991. Just beyond the wall of flashing camera lights, thousands of fans flanking the street screamed with each new arrival. Schwarzenegger tossed t-shirts from the stage. According to former gossip columnist, There were thousands and thousands of people outside. I remember it being worse than Studio 54 that night. Earl and Barish each look back on those early days a little differently. I didn't know if there'd be 1 or 10 restaurants, Barish says. I certainly never thought it would be a worldwide phenomenon. No one could have planned what it became. Earl says it was, in fact, exactly what he'd planned. I always thought it would be the size that it became because that was my world. That's all I did, feed people in large numbers, visitors to a city, locals in the city, sell merchandise. I'm made for that business. About 2 years after the Manhattan opening, Demi Moore joined Planet Hollywood officially, meaning she received shares in the company. The idea of giving options or stock to studio people or to agents was to get their involvement, but at a certain point we didn't have to. We didn't do it anymore because people were just coming because it was good for them, Barish says. The openings grew more elaborate. Steven Seagal arrived at the one in Vegas on an elephant. Whoopi Goldberg was carried in like Cleopatra. Planet Hollywoods opened in Moscow, Paris, Tel Aviv, Palestine. But the real fun happened at the pre-parties. If an opening was near a celebrity's homes, they would host a gathering the night before. Prior to the 1994 Miami opening, Stallone opened his home to everyone who came in for the occasion. Gloria and Emilio Estefan made arrangements for an enormous paella to be served. Patrick Swayze had the group over to his ranch outside Dallas, where he passed around plates of ribs fresh off the grill. It was raucous on the way to openings. People were juiced up, man, as they should be. I found that the more the people partied, the friendlier they were to the fans. Some were very friendly, Arnold says. Then the ride home, people were mostly hungover. They had tons of merchandise, so we'd load the plane up with all their merchandise. In April 1996, the company went public, trading 22.6 million shares as high as $32.12. It was the busiest day ever for a NASDAQ initial offering. And in 1997, Earl was named one of Time's most influential people in America. It has great sex appeal. It may not last, though, fund manager Neil Hokinson told the LA Times. These things always go public when they are at their absolute best and usually get worse from there. It was a bad year. It was a bad time. It was a mistake, says Barish. It put unnecessary pressure on the company to grow on a quarterly basis. It was never meant to be that. There were already Planet Hollywood restaurants in most major cities, so they had to find other ways to expand to meet the demands of being a publicly traded business. There would be retail stores, casinos, hotels, natural progression for the brand. But by the end of 1996, Planet Hollywood's profits for the first half of the year were down to $4 million from $12.7 million the year before. The bottom was falling out. Copycat restaurants were popping up all around by the mid-90s. There was Country Star with Reba McEntire, Clint Black, Vince Gill, and Winona Judd. Fashion Cafe with models Naomi Campbell, Elle Macpherson, and Claudia Schiffer. Steven Spielberg had Dive in Las Vegas, an underwater-themed restaurant. Hulk Hogan had Pasta Mania. Earl even launched a sports offshoot, the official All-Star Cafe, with Shaquille O'Neal, Andre Agassi, and Joe Montana. There was even an ice cream chain, Cool Planet, with Whoopi Goldberg. Any unique factor associated with Planet Hollywood was melting. Parrish stepped away from the company in early 1999. There were reports that his relationship with Earl had soured. Parrish says simply of his leaving, "It was time for me to do something else." Planet Hollywood had started the 90s as a glamorous, fresh idea. But as the next decade began, it appeared to be over, a relic of a bygone era. Now, over 3 decades since its grand opening in 1991, Earl says he wouldn't change a thing. "I'll tell you, not a regret, because we're doing fantastic now that we've transitioned, as you know, into gaming and hotels. But I've always thought, oh my God, if social media had been around when we launched." So, tell me, viewers, were you a young person in the early 90s when this franchise was fresh and new? Did you visit a location near you? My local Planet Hollywood was at South Coast Plaza in Costa Mesa, and I have precious memories of admiring the Terminator and the magic elixir from Death Becomes Her and so much more up close and personal. And the Captain Crunch chicken tenders. Please share any memories down below. Thanks for watching, and good night.